Alachua, you think the book is appropriate in the K-5 environment, even though it's referenced in pornography and dirty magazines?
What I voted for was that it would be for the 3 to 5 age group.
Which would be what ages?
So that would be 8 to 10, 12.
So you think an 8-year-old would be appropriate to be reading about pornography and dirty magazines?
If I were to opt out of this book or flag it for my son, what would stop you during your media special class from picking it up off the shelf and reading it to the group?
That's not a text I would choose because that would open up conversations that I would not have with children.
At this hearing, each party will have one count to present their case, which includes an opening statement, presenting evidence, questioning witnesses, and closing statement.
This journey began months ago when my older son brought home a book from the library at GHS that contained sexually explicit material depicting pedophilia. That revelation led to my looking into the collection in his school's library. Also, while attending an back-to-school event at Terwilliger, I came across a book in the library which contained clearly inappropriate subject matter for elementary-aged children. The potential influence on young impressionable minds without parental help and guidance deeply concerned me. That event also led me to my researching for this school's library collection as well. When I inquired about these books, I was denied even a respectful conversation and was told that there was a form and a procedure online that I needed to follow to object to any book. So far, having found numerous inappropriate books, I've initiated formal objections to each of them. As a result, at least 6 books containing sexually explicit material have been removed from the GHS library. We're about to begin my 3rd hearing before a hearing officer, a former district employee appointed by the superintendent and approved by the school board, which is the last step before presenting these books to a hearing magistrate selected by the Florida Department of Education, who I hope has not been corrupted by the progressive politics of Alachua County. Based on the manner these hearings have been conducted and the ever-changing rules and procedures, it is a foregone conclusion what the outcome will be. But I know I must make a record before reaching the Florida Department of Education and possibly the governor or a courtroom. I would like to share a few pages from this book, which is indicated for grades 1 to 3. This is Ruthie. She's a transgender girl. That means when she was born, everyone thought she was a boy until she grew a little older, old enough to tell everyone that she's actually a girl. Girl is Ruthie's gender identity. This is Ruthie's brother, Xavier. Xavier is a cisgender boy. That means when Xavier was born, everyone thought he was a boy, and as he grew older, it turned out everyone was right. He is a boy. Boy is Xavier's gender identity. There are so many different ways to be a boy or a girl, too many to fit in a book, but not everyone feels like either a boy or a girl. Non-binary is a helpful word that can describe a kid who doesn't feel exactly like a boy or a girl. This is Ruthie's friend, Alex. Alex is both a boy and a girl. When Alex was born, everyone thought Alex was a girl, but Alex is both boy and girl. This is Alex's gender identity. This is Alex's friend, JJ. JJ is neither a boy nor a girl. Ever since JJ was very little, they never felt exactly like a boy or a girl. They just felt like themselves. This is JJ's gender identity. Alex and JJ are non-binary. Just like there are many different ways to be a boy or a girl, there are many different ways to be non-binary. Too many to fit in a book. I'm going to jump ahead. See, when you're born, you couldn't tell people who you were or how you felt. They looked at you and made a guess. Maybe they got it right, maybe they got it wrong. What a baby's body looks like when you're born can be a clue to what the baby's gender will be, but not always. When people guess wrong, it's okay to let them know. Ruthie was 5 when she told her parents, "I know you think I'm a boy, but really, I feel like a girl." Oops, Ruthie was a girl all along. They just didn't know it at first. Xavier was 3 and a half when he told his family, "I'm a boy. I like being a boy." You might feel like a boy, you might feel like a girl, you might feel like both boy and girl, or neither. You might feel like your gender changes from day to day or from year to year. I'm going to stop there, questions of time, but I'd like to point out that at the end there's a glossary that's definitely aimed at adults. There's also resources including the Trevor Project with a phone number that would connect youth to a therapist within minutes of calling that phone number. Let's look at the statutes. Florida Statute 1006.28, parenthesis 2, parenthesis A, 2B, prohibited content. Any material used in the classroom, made available in a school or classroom library, or included on a reading list that contains content which is pornographic or prohibited under Statute 847.012, depicts or describes sexual conduct, unless such material is for a course required by certain statutes or identified by the State Board of Education rule, is not suited to student needs in their ability to comprehend the material presented, or is inappropriate for the grade level and age group for which the material is used. Let me read to you this other statute, 1006.282D2C. School library media services established and maintenance. I'll jump down to bullet point 2 or number 2. Each district school board shall adopt procedures for developing library media center collections, and the procedure must A, require the book selection meets the criteria, which I mentioned above, require consultation of reputable, professionally recognized reviewing periodicals and school community stakeholders, provide for library media center collections, including classroom libraries, based on reader interest, support of state academic standards, and aligned curriculum, and the academic needs of student and faculty, and D, provide for the regular removal of discontinuance of books based on, at a minimum, physical condition, rate of recent circulation, alignment to state academic standards and the relevancy to curriculum, out-of-date content, and required removal pursuant to subparagraph A2. Let's look at this bullet point C or subparagraph, however you refer to it. And let's look at the state academic standards to see if it's aligned with the curriculum. Statute 1000.071, personal titles and pronouns. It shall be the policy of every public K-12 educational institution that a person's sex is an immutable biological trait and that it is false to ascribe to a person a pronoun that does not correspond to such a person's sex. 1000.21, system-wide definitions. Sex means the classification of a person as either male or female or male. In 1001.42, classroom instruction by school personnel or third parties on sexual orientation or gender identity may not occur in pre-kindergarten through grade 8. 1003.46, health education. When such instruction and course material contains instruction on human sexuality, a school shall classify males and females as provided in 100.219, which I just read to you, and teach that biological males impregnate biological females by fertilizing the female egg with male sperm, that the female then gestates the offspring, and that these reproductive roles are binary, stable, and unchangeable. Let me go back to some of the quotes from the text. This is Ruthie. She's a transgender girl. That means when she was born, first of all, that was pronoun. She was a boy. Everyone thought she was a boy until she grew a little older, old enough to tell everyone that she's actually a girl. Alex is both a boy and a girl. JJ is neither a boy or a girl. I'm going to skip the bottom one.
There.
You may feel like your gender changes from day to day or from year to year.
Yeah.
So going back to the paragraph, the subparagraph C, providing for library media center collections, including classroom libraries, based on the support of reader interest, state academic standards, and line curriculum, as well as the academic needs of students and faculty, I ask question 1, to what degree does this text support state academic standards? To what degree does this text align with the curriculum? To what degree does this text support the academic needs of students and faculty? According to the statutes that I read to you, the first one prohibits the instruction of sexual orientation and gender ideologies in grade K to 8. The next, that a person's sex is immutable biological trait, and it's false to ascribe a personal pronoun that does not correspond to a person's sex. Sex means the classification of a person as either female or male, and that these reproductive roles are binary, stable, and unchangeable. This book clearly does not support state academic standards. It is not aligned to curriculum, and it does not support the academic needs of students and faculty. This book is in direct opposition to such standards. Turning to bullet point B, require consultation of reputable, professionally recognized reviewing periodicals and school community stakeholders. I just want to add, when you're assessing library materials, not one single criterion is categorical, as I said in my opening statement. You look at all the criteria and you make a professional judgment. Did you complete the DOE mandatory training for media specialists prior to my objecting to the book in your library last September?
Yes.
So the line of my argument here is that there's state statutes, right, that are laid out by the legislatures. To interpret those statutes, they created a training manual that by law, all media specialists must take to apply to their selection criteria, right? So I'm trying to get to, if she's applying the guidelines of the professional training to interpret the statutes to the selection of the texts, namely this text in the Turbo Library. Florida Statute 1006.28, parentheses 2, parentheses D, 2C, provides for library media center collections, including classroom libraries based on reader interest, support of state academic standards and line curriculum for the academic needs of students and faculty. Do you agree that that statute should guide your decision making for books in the school library?
Some books in the library are for supporting curriculum, but some are for voluntary choice to check out. The statute that I follow, and I've been guided, with guidance and my professional judgment to follow, is that from 1006.40, purchase of instructional materials, 3D, 1, free of pornography, suited to students' needs and their ability to comprehend the material presented, appropriate for grade level and age group for which the materials are used or made available.
Okay, yes, that is in the statute, but then there's further statutes that govern selection criteria. Are you not aware of the other statutes until now?
Dr. Mario's objection. She has answered how she selects and the criteria she uses.
Can I reword the question? 'Cause I'm really looking for a simple answer. Do you apply the criteria as dictated in the statutes, all of them, which I've read to you, in your selection of library materials?
I follow the statute that I've been guided to use, making my decision.
And who provided that guidance to you?
That is just from my professional judgment and research, and yes, district.
Were you involved, did you receive a request from Crystal Rule for objection to the book, It Feels Good to Be Yourself?
Yes, I did.
What did you do when you received that?
I notified Patty Duval and Ms. Swall so that we could form the committee and review the book based on the objection.
Okay, and did you do so?
Yes, we did.
Okay, and what did that meeting involve? Tell us how the meeting went and what the processes were.
Sure. Ms. Duval facilitated the meeting and provided us with statutory requirements around selection criteria. We were able to review the book together. We looked at peer-reviewed journals. We had a roundtable discussion so all committee members could provide input. And then we were all given a form to which we could document our input and vote.
What was the result of your evaluation of the text?
My evaluation was that it met the statutory requirements for media selection, and I voted to keep the book in the media center.
And what about the committee? Was there a consensus or was there any differentiation?
There was a consensus, and I believe it was all in favor of keeping the book in the media center.
There's a broader question I just want to ask you. Ever since this has occurred, when I send emails for very, boring information, I don't get a response. Have you been instructed not to respond to emails when I ask for the SAC guidelines or
Dr.
what else?
Monroe, that's not in line with the book. But you need to speak with the principal personal on that issue. This is about,
She doesn't answer my emails.
I'm sorry, but this, we have to continue with. Do you have a question on the book?
Yeah, I have another question. When I asked you for Daniel Norman's identity because the signature was illegible, did you forward that on to the public office, record of public offices?
Dr. Monroe, that's a personal issue.
No, it's about this book. Daniel Norman was an SAC member, but I wanted to call as a witness.
But you're asking her about the form.
No, I'm asking her, I wanted the identity of the person who signed the SAC form because I couldn't read the signature. So I'm asking if she took the proper protocol, which would be any public employee who receives a FOIA request needs it immediately forwarded on to
That
the.
still can be handled in a personal contact. We must continue with the hearing on the, do you have a question on the book?
Well, my question was the timeline, because I wanted Ms. Norman to be a witness here today. And I told her.
We're in the hearing for the book now, Dr. Moore, please. But we can handle that in a personal situation.
Is it true that there's no student that's 13 or older at your loader?
Yes.
Is it not a violation of state statutes or law to direct a student to therapy options under the age of 13 without parental consent?
Abject. We're not talking about referral to any therapy. That was listed in the book, but we're here to see if we're going to retain this book.
The book provides contact information to therapists. So my question is that appropriate to disseminate to a child under the age of 13?
If you're referring to the Trevor Project, if you look at the Trevor Project, it is a nonprofit organization. It is a 501c3, and it is not subject in my research to the statutes you're referring to. In addition to that, we typically have nonfiction books that have resources in the back of the book. That's pretty common for nonfiction text.
I'm not sure of the organization of the Trevor Project, but they announce on their webpage or advertise that you'd be in contact with the therapist within minutes. Is that not true?
I can't speak to the organization and what they offer, but in my research, because you asked me this last time, they are not subject to those statutes because of their nonprofit delineation.
Did you get guidance from the DOE on that?
No, ma'am, I
The
did
department?
Dr. Moore, any questions on the book?
That is in the
Any
book.
questions on the content of the book?
This is on the last page of the book.
I understand what's in the last page, but we want to say, but based on the criteria for a book being in the library, there are 3. Okay, any questions?
Ms. Harper, would you direct a student to therapy without parental consent if they're under the age of 13? And would you allow that to happen in your school?
The therapy, no, I would not.
Were you on the district committee that evaluated this book after the objection by Crystal LaRue?
Yes.
Okay. What was your opinion about the appropriateness of the book in an elementary library?
I felt that there were 1 or 2 words in the book that were above the reading level of elementary, but I did not feel that that was enough to make the book so that it would not be accessible to an elementary school student. I believe Dr. Merle, she posted my comments out there where I said that while it is comprehensible to students at that age, meaning a student I believe in elementary school could understand the material based on the way it was presented, that it does beg adult interaction.
One of the objections, or one of the statements made on the objection form that Crystal LaRue served in this case was that the book was based on a theory of gender identity that is not widely accepted in the general community, nor is it scientifically based. Do you agree with that statement?
No, ma'am, I do not.
Why not?
Transsexualism has been part of the psychology community and its scientific basis since the 1940s. It was first defined by Magnus Hirschfeld in the 1940s. Later on, a book on transsexualism was written by David Caldwell in 1949. 1966, Henry Benjamin published his foundational text, Transsexual Phenomenon. Transsexualism has been in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual since its 3rd edition, published in 1980, where it was listed as transsexualism. In the 4th edition of the DSM, which was published in 1994, it was referred to as gender identity disorder for adults and adolescents, meaning it did have child diagnoses in there. And then with the publication of the 5th edition in 2013, it was changed to gender identity, from gender identity disorder, I apologize, to gender dysphoria, where gender dysphoria is not as if someone who is transsexual has something wrong with them for being transsexual. It is the associated other issues that come along with it, such as anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts, etc.
So it is not in and of itself a medical diagnosis.
That's correct. And the international version of it, the ICD, in the ICD-10, it was still considered a medical diagnosis, as in the ICD-11, which I believe is published in 2021, and the ICD is published by the World Health Organization. Moved gender identity disorder from that iteration to gender incongruence, and has been put in a sexual health chapter, not a mental disorder chapter.
Is gender dysphoria a controversial theory?
Not within the psychological community, no.
Do you have an opinion as to whether the theories in this book, the statements in this book, are controversial within the scientific community?
Within what is taught at my level, at least, which would be an introduction to psychology course, no, ma'am.
I just want to understand how you're mentally organizing this and how I mentally organize it. Basically, I can break that down into bullet points of considerations. You're going to consider reader interest. You're going to consider support state academic standards. You're going to evaluate the alignment with the curriculum. And you're going to evaluate the academic needs of student and faculty, correct? And we're going to apply that criteria to look at the text and see how it plays out for each one of those sub-bullet points. Would that make sense?
Dr. Jackson, he's not offered as a media specialist. He's a specialist in social studies and psychology and so that kind of curriculum. So I think if I were in a courtroom, I would say there's a lack of predicate, but I don't think he has not testified to anything that has to do with the selection criteria. That's not what he was offered for.
My question, if I misunderstood your title, you had something to do with curriculum, correct?
Yes, ma'am, I'm in charge of the social studies curriculum for the district.
Okay, so this has an alignment with curriculum, so I'm building my question about the alignment to curriculum. May I proceed?
Yes.
The procedures must take into consideration, and then we bullet pointed them out, right? Reader interest, support of state academic standards, alignment with curriculum, and the academic needs of students and faculty, right? So those are the bullet points.
Yes, ma'am.
So my question is, when you're evaluating this text to see if it supports state academic standards or if it's aligned with curriculum, what say ye?
This book in particular
Yeah, this book in particular, does it?
not align specifically with social studies standards.
It does not.
With social studies standards, no, ma'am.
Do you know of what standards it does align with?
I would say it has the possibility to align with English language arts standards, but I do not have a thorough enough knowledge of those standards to say 100%.
Well, that's Mr. Berry, I'm sure he
All
does.
right, thank you, Dr. Rennes. In lieu of time,
So, well, can I finish the other bullet point? Would you say that this text in evaluation to that criteria supports state academic standards?
It has the ability to support state academic standards for reading, yes.
And a curriculum on gender identity, would it support or would it be against that? Or would it
Those are two
violate it?
different things you're asking though, because one is, would it be able to be supported? Yes, it would be able to be supported, but legally it cannot be used in support. Because
Okay.
of,
Dr. Monroe,
Well, I think this is relevant.
we're getting into instructional curriculum.
No, I am not. I am getting into the alignment of library material selection when compared if it's in support of state academic standards and aligned curriculum. He said that it does not align with the social studies curriculum. So now I'm moving and asking about does it align with state standards, and he's making a very eloquent argument that perhaps that there's some standards it would support, maybe literacy, perhaps other standards it would not, as the standards are currently written. And I just want to make sure that I understand that that's what you're saying.
Do you agree with the following statement that I talked about in my opening remarks? That any library book that encourages kids to read voluntarily is supplemental to their education?
Yes.
At what grade, I honestly don't know the answer, at what grade are sex roles or sex differences instructed to students?
So that, I am not aware of that grade level either. That is not part of something that I'm aware of. I will say that there's been discussion around the connection to curriculum standards, and I know that we looked at selection criteria, but one of the curriculum standards is understanding stories, character settings, events, and so I could see a connection with that. That's a kindergarten and first grade standard. We also are implementing resiliency standards beginning next year, which involves showing respect to others, and that's a primary standard that I think is like a consideration. I also am noting like the differences between a requirement and selection criteria and a consideration when it comes to reviewing materials, and I think that those are different standards.
What was your responsibility for the book challenges at the time this challenge came through?
So when this challenge came through, we were still doing a school level review first, at which I would facilitate the meeting, but I was not a voting member. And as a facilitator, I made sure that the committee was aware of what the complaint was and what the statutory requirements are for selection of library materials.
What are your responsibilities at the district level?
So at the district level, I still facilitate, but I am also a voting member.
And to your knowledge, has Crystal LaRue ever told you or instructed Terwilliger Elementary School to forbid her child from reading this book?
No, ma'am.
Has she ever told you or Terwilliger Elementary, to your knowledge, that her child was not permitted to read the book Melissa?
To my knowledge, there has not been a submission of library limitation for those books from Dr. Moore.
I just find it very problematic that I did submit a form requesting that my son not be provided with any library material that does not meet the statutory requirements for selection.
Correct. But every book in our library meets the statutory requirement for library selection.
Except for the 6 withdrawn from DHS. Do you submit to the authority of Florida Statute 1006.28 parentheses 2 parentheses D 2C that states providing for library and media center collections, including classroom libraries, based on reader interest, support of state academic standards, and aligned curriculum for the academic needs of students and faculty?
So my interpretation of that statement is that the statute says that school boards must provide for, in establishing the library media center, that the book must meet the selection criteria established in 1006.403D, which is the selection criteria for a library book. The overall library collection should support standards, which they do. It doesn't mean that every single book in the library must apply a state standard to that book.
Why does the training then stipulate for the selection of library materials, you need to be selecting books that support the standards and the curriculum and be aligned with them, and to err on the side of caution when there's any red flags about that?
So, first of all, the training for the library media specialist, it does tell us to err on the side of caution. This book was purchased 2 years before that training even happened. So, and 1006.283D looked totally different at the time that this book was selected. So the standards and the library selection and the clarification all happened with the passage of HB 1467, which took place on 7/1/2022.
So what I understand is under current statutes, you would need to take that into consideration, and thus, when brought to your attention, you should reevaluate or audit the book's appropriateness according to current statute. Is that correct?
No.
So they're not bothered in?
If the book is formally challenged, we review it against the standard. This book meets the selection criteria based in 1006.403D.
But it violates the support of state academic standards and aligned curriculum. If you want to argue
selection criteria.
it is part, it says the procedures must provide school library media services, establishment and maintenance. The procedures must provide for library media center collections, including classroom libraries based on reader interest, support state academic standards, and aligned curriculum and the academic needs of student and faculty.
Every book in the school library is not required to stand up to a standard. Our overall collection does support our library, our curriculum. So there are books in the library that students can go to the library and if they need to do a report on government or if they're researching a particular topic. All of those books are available to students that are within the selection criteria, but every book in the library does not align to curriculum.
So your interpretation
Thank you,
is,
Dr. Moreau.
but
We have utilized your 5 minutes all. You have 15 total minutes that was given to you by Attorney Siegel.
I just want to ask where she's getting that guidance from,
That
because
time-
according to the training,
That time
it
has
says differently.
expired.
The statutory criteria for handling parent challenges of library books are clear, and I'm relying on the 3rd and 4th standard in sections 1006
parentheses 2, parentheses A, 2B. More specifically, library books must be age appropriate and complementary to the instructional curriculum of the children who have access to the book. Further, in looking at the criteria for book selection and or retention in the library collection, we see these concepts fleshed out. They clearly show the content of It Feels Good to Be Yourself is not appropriate for elementary age children, especially kindergarten or first grade, to look at or read. Even with adult guidance, which would have to be parents, it is highly questionable if the content is appropriate for young developing children who have no experiential base to understand the content. And certainly, teachers are not in a position to explore such a book with a child under the 9th grade. The interesting wrinkle here is that the district level media specialists and her staff at Terwilliger Elementary School believe that they have an inside understanding of these criteria, not by the Department of Education who promulgated the mandatory instruction for school media specialists. Whether they're willing to say directly or indirectly, they believe that the Florida Department of Education, staff and legal counsel got it wrong. Essentially, they're saying we are not going to operate under the law we have been given. We are going to operate under what we think the law is. This conduct is deserving of discipline and possibly even greater punitive action. I will not be discouraged from doing that which is right. For I am not afraid of those who can kill the body but cannot kill the soul. Rather, I am afraid of the one who destroyed both soul and body. Whoever acknowledges me before others, I will also acknowledge before my Father in heaven. But whoever disowns me before others, I will disown before my Father in heaven. I will not be the only parent who stands up against this cabal. I may be the first, but I will not be the last. Courage is contagious.
We recommend that you follow the arguments made by the state in that pleading, because any library book that encourages children to read voluntarily is supplemental to their education. Reading is required in all subject areas, and as the state of Florida defendant said, it is not confined to a particular curricular interest material in a course. So any argument about what curriculum does this support doesn't make any difference. It is puzzling that if this book, if Melissa and if A's for Activists are so damaging to all the children of this county, that Crystal Rule has not told Terwilliger to make sure her child doesn't check it out. We would ask that you make a recommendation to the board that this book be retained. Thank you.
And within 14 days of this hearing, I will render a recommended order, and it will be submitted to the school board. Each party will receive a copy of that order. The school board, at a regular business meeting, will make the final determination as to the disposition of this case. Dr. Muro, you have an opportunity to attend that school board meeting and to speak on the item at that board meeting. You have the right to submit objections to the school board prior to that meeting, if you have any objections to my recommendation. Does either party have any questions for the hearing officer?
No, ma'am, not from the district.
May we comment on your order before you submit it to the school board?
Okay. Are there any other questions? This hearing is adjourned.